The night was quiet, and the world was asleep. In a small town far from the city lights, children were already dreaming, and the streets were empty. The moonlight spread a soft glow on the houses, and the sound of insects filled the silence. It was the kind of night when nothing unusual was expected. Yet that night was different. Something was moving in the sky, something that did not belong to Earth. High above the sleeping world, strange lights appeared. At first they looked like stars, brighter than usual. But soon they began to move, faster than any airplane, smoother than any machine built by humans. The lights were silent, not making the sound of engines or wings. They glided across the sky like ghosts, shining in colors no one had seen before. Red, green, and silver beams stretched like rivers of fire, cutting across the dark sky. Some people who were still awake noticed. A farmer standing on his field dropped the bucket from his hand. A traveler driving on the highway pulled his car to the side and stared up. In different countries, far from each other, eyes turned to the sky, filled with shock. Everyone thought the same question. What is that? The lights grew brighter and closer. Birds hiding in the trees suddenly flew out, as if frightened. Dogs barked wildly. Even the wind seemed to stop, holding its breath. The sky was no longer calm. It was alive. In one small town, a young boy named Aram stood at his window. He was only 10 years old, but he felt something unusual in his heart that night. He pressed his face to the glass, watching the strange colors moving above. He whispered to himself, "This is not normal. This is not ours." And then it happened. The lights slowed down, circling above the fields near the town. With a final flash, they stopped in the air, hanging like giant stars that refused to fall. For a moment, everything became silent, too silent. The insects stopped singing, the air froze, and even the sound of the boy's heartbeat felt louder than the world outside. The ground trembled lightly, as if the earth itself was afraid. And then slowly the lights descended. They came lower and lower until they were no longer just lights, but shapes. Dark metallic figures, smooth and shining, covered in symbols glowing like fireflies. The people who saw them could not speak. Their mouths were dry, their eyes wide open. The world had been waiting for this moment for centuries, yet when it finally came, it did not feel like victory. It felt like fear. The boy, Aram, whispered again, his voice shaking, "They are not here to visit. They are here for something else." Across the globe, news channels broke into emergency reports. Scientists called each other in panic, trying to explain what no science could. Some thought it was war. Others thought it was the end of the world. But deep inside, everyone knew the truth. This was something greater, something humanity was never prepared for. As the strange crafts landed silently in the empty field, a soft humming filled the air. It was not a sound made by machines. It was something deeper, something that seemed to touch the bones inside the body. It was a sound that made people feel watched, judged, and small. A door opened on one of the crafts, and a bright silver light spilled out. No figure stepped forward, no shadow moved, yet the feeling of presence was undeniable. The air was heavy, thick with fear and curiosity. That night, history changed. The boy at the window, the farmer in his field, the traveler on the highway, the scientists in their labs. They all felt the same chill in their hearts. The question was not, what are they? But why are they here? And in that silence, the truth whispered itself into every human soul. These beings were not lost travelers. They had found Earth on purpose. But the look in their strange, glowing eyes carried no joy, no excitement, no kindness. It carried something darker. It carried regret. The boy, still standing at his window, would remember this forever. Years later, he would tell his children and his grandchildren, "I still remember that night, when the sky was not ours anymore. The world had always imagined that aliens would come with war or with peace, but no one had ever imagined that they would come with sorrow." The night ended with fear, and the sun rose on a different Earth. From that day, humanity was no longer alone. But they were not welcomed with celebration. They were looked upon with disappointment. The story of regret had just begun. The world was awake now. What had started as a silent night turned into a storm of fear and confusion. The strange crafts had landed in more than one place. Reports came from deserts, forests, even frozen lands of the north. The whole earth was watching, waiting for the first move. In the small town where Arham lived, the giant craft stood silently in the empty field. The metallic surface glowed under the moonlight, smooth and perfect, as if no hand had ever touched it. No door opened, no creature walked out. It was only stillness, but it was the kind of stillness that pressed heavy on the chest. People gathered at a distance, too afraid to go near, yet too curious to stay away. Some carried cameras, recording every moment. Others prayed under their breath, asking God for safety. Children hid behind their parents, their little eyes peeking at the strange object that looked alive even in silence. The sound returned, the same deep humming, not loud but powerful enough to make the earth vibrate. Dogs whined and ran in circles. Birds crashed into trees, unable to understand the invisible energy filling the air, and then, without warning, the light came. From the middle of the craft, a circle of silver fire spread across the ground, painting everything in white. It was not hot, not burning, but it made people shield their eyes. The circle grew until it touched the feet of those standing close. Gasps filled the night. "It's opening!" someone shouted. Yes, a doorway appeared. The smooth surface of the craft split silently, and from inside came a brightness brighter than the moon, almost blinding. Out of that light, shadows began to move. They were tall, taller than any human. Their bodies were thin, their skin glowing faintly as if made of soft glass. Strange symbols, shining like stars, covered their forms. They had no mouths, no ears that could be seen, only large, deep eyes that carried endless space inside them. The crowd stepped back. Some screamed. Some cried, but no one ran. Fear had tied them to the ground. Aram, standing at his window, saw everything. His heart raced, but he could not look away. The aliens walked slowly, each step silent, as if their feet never truly touched the ground. They looked around, not like conquerors, not like explorers, but like beings carrying a heavy sadness. One of them turned its eyes toward the crowd. In that moment, something strange happened. People felt emotions inside their minds, emotions that were not theirs. A wave of sorrow passed through every heart, deep and heavy, like remembering a tragedy you had never lived. A woman in the crowd covered her mouth and cried. A man fell to his knees, unable to breathe. Even Arham felt tears roll down his cheeks, though he didn't know why. The alien's eyes glowed brighter. Suddenly, voices appeared. Not outside, but inside the heads of people. Words formed not from sound, but from thought. Why? The question echoed. Simple. Heavy. People looked at each other, shivering. No one spoke, but everyone had heard it. The aliens had not come to ask who humans were. They already knew. Their question was different, deeper. Why do you harm your own world? Why do you harm each other? The crowd trembled. It was not a question they could answer. The weight of truth pressed down on them. Images began to appear inside their minds. War, burning forests, hungry children, polluted oceans. Images of humanity's worst sins, Aram gasped. He saw fires and smoke, soldiers and weapons, cities drowning in water, people screaming in pain. He pressed his small hands against his head, crying out, "Stop! Stop!" But the visions continued. The aliens were not showing violence. They were showing regret. One alien raised its long arm, and from its palm a light spread across the ground. A boy from the crowd, no older than Arham, was pulled gently forward, though no one touched him. The boy's parents screamed, but the child stood calmly, as if controlled by a dream. The alien bent down, its glowing face close to the boy's. The child's eyes widened as he received visions even stronger than before. He shook, but he did not fall. His lips moved, whispering words only he could understand. Finally, the light faded, and the boy collapsed into his mother's arms. His eyes were wide open, filled with tears. "They know us," he whispered, voice shaking. "They know everything, and they are sad." The crowd stepped back again, their fear turning into a heavy silence. The aliens stood together, their glowing eyes watching the humans with an expression no one could explain. It was not anger, not kindness, but pure disappointment. Scientists watching from screens across the world could not believe it. Leaders argued in secret rooms, fearing what this meant. But deep in every heart, one truth was clear. The aliens had not come to destroy. They had not come to celebrate. They had come to mourn. And in that night, for the first time, humanity felt smaller than ever before. The night after the landing was heavy with silence. Around the world, millions stayed awake, staring at their screens, waiting for answers. Governments sent soldiers to surround the crafts, but none dared to attack. Scientists begged for time, priests prayed for mercy, and ordinary people whispered questions in the dark. But the aliens never moved with violence. They stood quietly, tall and glowing, as if they were waiting for something deeper than war or peace. In the small town where Arham lived, the field had turned into a place of fear and wonder. The aliens were still there, their symbols shining faintly on their bodies. Their eyes looked far beyond human sight, as if they were staring through time itself. Among the crowd stood the young boy who had been touched by their light earlier. His name was Samir. He was only 11 years old, but the moment the alien had chosen him, he no longer looked like a child. His eyes had changed. They carried something strange, something heavy. People whispered about him. Some said he was blessed. Others said he was cursed. But Samir himself remained silent. He stayed close to his mother, holding her hand, yet his mind was far away. He had seen something no one else had seen. The aliens seemed to notice him again. One of them lifted its hand, and a beam of silver light spread gently across the crowd. The light touched Samir, pulling him forward once more. His mother cried out, "No, please!" But Samir let go of her hand and stepped toward the beings. His feet moved slowly, yet he did not resist. The crowd gasped as the boy stood in front of the alien. The creature bent down, its glowing eyes locked on his. For a moment, the air became so quiet that even the sound of breathing disappeared. And then it happened. The boy's body trembled as visions filled his mind. His eyes rolled back, his lips opened, and words began to fall out, words that were not his own. "They know our past," he whispered. "They know our wars, our greed, our cruelty." The crowd froze. "They have seen the oceans we poisoned, the forests we burned, the children who starved while others wasted food." His voice shook, yet the words came like a flood. They came looking for kindness, but what they found is pain. His mother tried to reach for him, but the light around the boy kept her away. The alien did not touch him, yet the bond was unbreakable. Samir's voice grew stronger, filled with an echo that did not belong to a child. "They regret finding us." Those words hit the people like thunder. Murmurs filled the air. Some cried, others shook their heads in denial. But the truth was heavy, pressing into every soul that heard it. The boy continued, tears streaming down his cheeks. "They came across the stars, searching for life. They hoped to find friends, hearts full of light. But they found us, angry, divided, destroying our own home. They fear that we will never change. They fear we will bring our darkness to the stars." Aram, still watching from his window, felt his chest tighten. The words cut deeper than any weapon. He thought of the fights he had seen in the streets, the smoke rising from factories, the cries of children on the news. The alien regret suddenly made sense. The alien's eyes glowed brighter, and Samir fell to his knees. His voice grew soft, weak, but still clear. "They want to warn us. They want to show us before it is too late." And then silence. The light faded, and the boy collapsed into his mother's arms. His body was shaking, his skin cold, but his eyes were wide open, staring at nothing. People rushed forward, shouting, some trying to help the child, others shouting questions at the aliens. But the beings did not answer. They only stood still, their glowing forms unmoving, their eyes filled with the same deep sorrow. One man in the crowd screamed, "What do you want from us?" The aliens did not speak, but everyone already knew the answer. They wanted nothing. They had come not to take, not to rule, but to show the truth, a truth humans had been too blind to see. That night, Samir lay in bed, whispering words again and again in his sleep. His mother stayed beside him, terrified but unable to wake him. The words repeated like a broken echo. Change or disappear. Arham, unable to sleep, wrote those words on a piece of paper, his hands shaking. He did not know why, but he felt those words were not just a warning, they were a countdown. The world had begged for a sign from the stars. Now the stars had answered, and their message was not of hope, but of regret. The following morning, the entire world felt heavier. The sun rose, but it brought no warmth, no comfort. Everywhere, people whispered about the visions that Samir had shared. News channels replayed the moment again and again, the boy's trembling voice echoing across television screens. They regret finding us. In the small town, the alien crafts still stood silently in the field. Soldiers kept their distance, weapons ready but useless. Scientists set up equipment, recording every vibration, every sound, yet no machine could explain the strange energy that filled the air. It was not technology they faced. It was something far beyond. Samir remained weak, lying in his mother's arms. His eyes stayed open but distant, as if he was looking at a world no one else could see. He whispered broken words in his sleep. Fire. Children. Oceans. Regret. His mother cried softly, begging him to stop, but the words never ended. Arham, from his small window, kept watching the field. He was only 10, but he felt as if he had aged years overnight. His heart was restless. He wanted to understand what the aliens meant. Why regret? Why sadness instead of anger? The answer came that very evening. As the sun set, the air once again filled with the low humming sound. The aliens stepped forward, their glowing bodies shining brighter in the orange light of dusk. The crowd held its breath. For the first time, the creatures raised their arms, and a wave of light spread across the humans gathered. This time, everyone saw it. Visions flooded their minds, millions of images striking like lightning. Wars across centuries, rivers running red with blood, explosions tearing apart cities, forests cut down until the earth lay bare, animals hunted to extinction, children crying, faces covered in dust and hunger. The crowd screamed. Some collapsed to the ground. Some covered their eyes, but the visions burned inside their heads whether their eyes were open or shut. And then a voice filled the air. Not one voice, but many layered together, echoing inside every mind. We searched for life among the stars. The words carried sorrow, like a song filled with grief. We hoped to find a race of kindness, of wisdom, of peace. The images shifted, beautiful worlds with oceans shining blue, forests untouched, skies clear. Then darkness, humans building weapons, dropping fire from the sky, burning their own planet for power and greed. We thought Earth would be our answer, but you are your own destruction. Gasps filled the crowd. Tears rolled down faces. Even soldiers lowered their guns, their eyes wet with shame. One alien stepped closer, its towering figure standing only meters away from the humans. Its eyes glowed so deeply that it was like staring into a universe of sorrow. We regret finding you, it spoke directly into their minds. Because now we carry your pain. We see what you do to each other, to your world, and we fear what you will bring to the stars. Aram felt his chest ache as the words sank into him. He remembered the fights he had seen in the streets, the smoke rising from factories, the news showing children running from bombs. The aliens were right. Humanity had everything: intelligence, creativity, beauty. But they had poisoned it with anger and greed. The alien's voice grew softer, almost like a whisper. We do not come to rule. We do not come to destroy. We come only to warn. For your path leads not to greatness, but to ashes. The crowd stood frozen, struck by the weight of those words. Some wept openly, clutching their families. Others shouted angrily, "It's not true! We are not like that!" But deep down, every heart knew the truth. Samir, still weak, opened his eyes and whispered, "They are right. They see what we refuse to see." Silence followed. The aliens did not move, but their presence filled every space, every breath. It was not hate they brought, nor kindness. It was regret. The kind of regret one feels when a dream is broken before it can bloom. For the first time, humanity understood something terrifying. The aliens had not come to conquer Earth because there was nothing here worth conquering. They had not come to celebrate because there was nothing here worth celebrating. They had come only to mourn what humanity could have been. As the night returned, the crafts glowed faintly in the darkness, like silent tombs standing on sacred ground. The people went home, but their hearts carried the weight of what they had seen. Aram lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The alien words replayed in his mind. "We regret finding you." He wondered if humans would ever change, or if it was already too late. The world was restless. Days had passed since the first arrival, but the aliens had not left, nor had they attacked. Their silence was heavier than any weapon. Every night, their crafts glowed faintly like watchful eyes, and every morning, people woke with fear in their hearts. Scientists argued endlessly on live television. Some believed the aliens were here to guide humanity. Others claimed they were testing the planet before invasion. But those who had seen the visions knew the truth. This was not war, and it was not friendship. It was disappointment. In the small town where it all began, the aliens gathered once again at sunset. This time, the crowd was larger than ever before. Reporters stood with cameras, soldiers surrounded the field, and families clung to each other, unsure if they wanted to see what would happen next. Aram stood hidden behind a tree, too curious to stay at home. Samir, the boy who had been chosen, was there too, pale and weak, but determined. He felt a strange bond with the beings, as if their sorrow now lived inside him. The humming sound filled the air once more. The crafts opened, and the tall, glowing figures stepped forward. But tonight, something was different. Their symbols burned brighter, their eyes deeper. The air itself seemed to bend under the weight of their presence. Without moving their lips, the voices filled every mind again. "You wonder why we came." The crowd went silent. "We have crossed galaxies. We have touched countless stars. We have seen worlds born and worlds destroyed. For ages, we searched for life that could share in harmony. Visions struck again, but this time they were not of Earth. The people saw strange planets, oceans of crystal, mountains glowing under twin suns, forests filled with creatures beyond imagination. Worlds alive, untouched, pure. We found many forms of life. Some were strong, but without wisdom. Some were peaceful, but without the will to grow. And some destroyed themselves before they could bloom. The visions shifted. Planets burning, species vanishing, civilizations collapsing under their own pride. The voice grew heavier. Among them all, you, humans, were different. Your light was brighter, your mind sharper. You had the power to create beauty beyond measure. Images of human achievements flashed, bridges stretching across rivers, children laughing in schools, art painted in colors, music rising to the skies, rockets flying into space. For a moment, the crowd felt pride, but the visions changed. Explosions, smoke, blood, greed, oceans filled with plastic, forests cut down to nothing, factories spilling poison into the sky, weapons pointed at children. Your greatness is buried under your cruelty. You create wonders, and then you destroy them with your own hands. You could have been the answer we sought. Instead, you are the warning we feared. Gasps echoed across the field. People trembled as the weight of truth crushed them. Aram gripped the tree tighter. His young heart ached, but he could not stop watching. He thought of the times he had seen people fighting for money, food wasted while beggars starved, rivers black with smoke. Everything the aliens showed was real. Samir, standing near the front, whispered weakly, "They hoped for love. They found hate." One alien stepped closer, towering above the crowd. Its glowing hand lifted toward the sky, and the stars themselves seemed to shine brighter. "We regret discovering you, because in you we saw both hope and destruction. And now we fear your darkness will not stop here. If you escape your world, if you reach the stars as we have, you may carry your violence with you." The words struck like thunder. Humanity had dreamed of exploring the universe, meeting other civilizations, spreading across the stars. But the aliens were telling them a terrible truth. The universe feared them. The alien lowered its hand, its eyes glowing like dying suns. You stand at a choice. Change your path, or be remembered as the species that poisoned its gift. Silence followed. No one dared to breathe. The only sound was the distant crying of a child in the crowd. For the first time, humanity saw itself through the eyes of another world, not as conquerors, not as dreamers, but as a danger. Aram's small voice whispered to himself, "We are the monsters in their story." Samir turned to the people around him. His young face was pale, but his words were clear. "They do not hate us. They pity us, and that is worse." The crowd broke into whispers, arguments, shouts. Some denied the truth, yelling that humans were strong, that Earth was powerful. Others wept openly, realizing how much had already been lost. But above all the noise, the aliens remained still, their glowing eyes filled with endless sorrow. They had traveled across galaxies searching for friends. Instead, they had found a warning of what life should never become. Their regret was no longer a mystery. It was the truth. The world held its breath. After the revelation, nothing felt the same. Children no longer played in the streets the same way. Families stayed awake at night, staring at the sky, wondering what the future held. Some prayed, some argued, but everyone felt the same heavy truth. Humanity had been judged, and the verdict was regret. In the small town where it all began, the field had turned into a sacred place. The alien crafts still stood silently, glowing faintly like giant hearts that refused to stop beating. People came from miles away, just to stand at a distance, to see the visitors who carried both warning and sorrow. Arham stood once more by his window. His eyes were tired, but he could not look away. Something inside him told him that the story was not finished. The aliens had revealed their regret, but there was still one more step to come. And then, one evening, the air changed again. The low humming filled the earth, shaking bones and hearts alike. Lights poured from the crafts, brighter than ever before. The ground glowed as symbols burned into the soil, strange patterns stretching like rivers of fire. The aliens stepped forward, their tall, glowing figures more radiant than the sun itself. The crowd trembled. Soldiers tightened their grip on weapons, but no one fired. Fear held them still. This time the voices were stronger, echoing in every mind with thunder and grief. We do not come to punish. We do not come to destroy. That power belongs to you, and you have used it too many times. The crowd remained silent, the words sinking like knives. But we give you one choice, a final chance. Change, or let your story end. Gasps filled the air. People looked at each other, confused and terrified. What did end mean? Would the aliens destroy them? Or would humanity destroy itself if it refused to listen? The visions came again. The people saw a future Earth, rivers black, skies red, deserts swallowing cities, oceans drowning lands. They saw humans fighting each other, not for survival but for greed, until the world itself collapsed into silence. Then, the vision shifted. A different future. Children laughing in green fields, clean water flowing in rivers, skies bright and clear. Humans holding hands, not weapons. A world reborn, peaceful and alive. Two paths. One choice. Aram's small heart raced. He whispered to himself, "They are showing us what we could be, or what we will be." Samir, still pale and weak, stepped forward from the crowd. The alien's light touched him once again, pulling him closer. His voice shook as he spoke, words not fully his own. "They say the choice is not theirs." "It is ours," the crowd gasped. Samir continued, tears rolling down his cheeks. "They will not rule us. They will not guide us. They will not fight us. They will only watch. And remember." His mother tried to pull him back, but the light around him was too strong. The boy's voice grew louder. "They are giving us one chance. If we change, we may live. If we refuse, we will vanish, by our own hands." The words echoed across the crowd. Soldiers lowered their weapons. Reporters stood frozen, cameras forgotten. Parents clutched their children tighter. One alien raised its glowing hand, and suddenly symbols appeared on the ground, burning bright across deserts, forests, mountains, and oceans all over the world. From the skies, satellites captured the shapes, strange patterns carved into Earth itself. Scientists would later spend years trying to decode them, but everyone understood the message without translation. It was a warning and a deadline. The aliens spoke once more, their voices softer, filled with a sadness that shook every soul. "We regret discovering you, but you may yet regret what you have become. Remember our words and choose." The light faded. The aliens stepped back into their crafts, leaving the crowd trembling in silence. The humming slowed, the glow dimmed, but the presence of their sorrow remained heavy in the air. Aram fell to his knees, his small hands pressed to the ground where the symbols still burned faintly. His heart felt crushed, but he also felt a spark of something new, hope, fragile but alive. Samir collapsed into his mother's arms once again, whispering the same words over and over. Change, or disappear. Change, or disappear. The people left the field slowly, their faces pale, their minds heavy. Across the world, leaders met in secret, scientists searched for answers, and ordinary people wondered if anything could truly change. The aliens had not destroyed Earth. They had not fired a single weapon. But somehow their warning was more terrifying than war, because now humanity knew the truth. The end was not coming from the sky. It was coming from within. Years passed. The night of the alien warning became a memory, but it was a memory no one could forget. The world was never the same after that. Some people tried to change. They planted trees, cleaned rivers, and built schools instead of weapons. Others ignored the warning, saying it was only fear and illusion. Wars still broke out in corners of the world. Greed still lived inside human hearts. But there was also a new voice rising, louder with each generation, the voice of those who remembered the choice. Arham grew older. The little boy who once watched the sky from his window was now a young man. Yet every night he still looked at the stars. He carried the memory of that night as if it was written into his soul. Samir, the boy who had been chosen as the voice, was no longer the same either. After that day his body grew weaker, but his mind grew sharper. People called him the messenger, even though he never asked for such a title. Everywhere he went, people wanted to hear him speak. He repeated the aliens' words again and again, change or disappear. But over the years, people began to doubt again. They said, if the aliens truly cared, why didn't they return? Why didn't they help us? Some mocked Samir, calling him a child who was used by strangers from the sky. Yet Samir never stopped believing. One night, years after the first encounter, Arham went to visit Samir. The two sat quietly on the rooftop of Samir's house, staring at the endless stars. The world below them was restless. Cities glowing, cars rushing, humans busy in their endless race. Samir spoke softly, his voice tired but steady. "They haven't come back." Aram nodded. "Maybe they are still watching, waiting for us." "Or maybe," Samir whispered, "they already decided. Maybe we failed." Aram turned to him quickly. "No, we still have a chance." "Don't say that," but Samir's eyes were far away, lost in the stars. "Do you feel it, Aram?" The silence? "It's heavier now, I think." "They are gone!" The words hit Aram's chest like stone. For a long time, they sat in silence, only the night wind moving around them. Then, suddenly, the air changed. A deep vibration shivered through the ground. The same humming sound from years ago filled the sky. The rooftop shook slightly, and the stars seemed to tremble. Both boys froze, and then they saw it. A light. Far in the distance on the horizon, brighter than the moon. It grew larger, stronger, spreading across the night like a burning dawn. Aram's heart raced. His breath caught. "They're back," he whispered. The light pulsed once, twice, like a heartbeat. The humming grew louder, shaking every window, every tree, every bone. Dogs barked, babies cried, alarms rang in the streets. People rushed outside, pointing at the sky with fear and wonder. Samir gripped Aram's arm, his eyes wide but calm. "It's not the same as before. This feels different." Aram swallowed hard. His throat was dry. "What do you mean?" Samir didn't answer. His gaze was locked on the approaching light, his lips trembling as if repeating words no one else could hear. The light expanded until the sky was no longer dark. The stars disappeared, swallowed by the glow. The sound was now so strong that it felt like the earth itself was alive. And then, silence. Complete. Endless silence. The light froze above the city, motionless. Like an eye staring down at humanity, every person who saw it felt the same chill. This was not just a return. This was something else. The world held its breath once again. Aram's voice shook as he whispered the only words that came to his mind. Did we choose too late? The light pulsed once more, and then darkness. The night sky returned as if nothing had ever happened. The stars twinkled again. The humming was gone. Only silence remained. Samir collapsed to his knees, his face pale, his body trembling. He whispered words that only Aram heard. They came to see our choice, and now they know. Aram looked at the stars, his heart pounding with fear and sorrow. The question echoed in his soul, louder than the silence around him. Had humanity been saved? Or had the end already begun?